Shabbat Shalom. This past week, we watched as the Derek Chauvin verdict was delivered. And he was found guilty on all three charges. And our entire country breathed a sigh of relief. Not that this puts to rest all of the issues we face, but that in fact our system of justice produced a sense of justice. The moment this week was almost a full year in the making. Last year in May, during a sermon concerning Ahmaud Arbery's murder, I began speaking about how I recommended that we watch the video of Ahmaud Arbery's murder, that we not look away, that we cannot look away. Then came other videos culminating this past summer with the video of George Floyd's death, which seems almost incomprehensible if you watched it for yourself. With a knee on the back of his neck, we could watch his last breaths, and we could literally hear the country's outcry as he passed on. We're obligated to watch that video. We cannot turn a blind eye to injustice. As always, the Torah addresses our lives this week in the weekly reading. This week is a double parsha called Acharei Mot Kedoshim, or After Death, Holiness. Please don't get me wrong. In no way am I comparing the character of George Floyd to the character of Aaron's two sons. But I do think that one of the eternal messages of the Torah is that after tragedy, there comes a reckoning. There comes a demand for holiness. There comes a demand for justice. This is the process by which not only Judaism self-improves, it is the process by which humanity self-improves. From Judaism's perspective, holiness and justice are interconnected. The Hebrew words kodesh and tzedek are related. If somebody lives a life imbued with holiness, kedusha, that makes that person a righteous person, a tzaddik or a tzedeket. After tragedy comes holiness. After tragedy comes a demand for justice. Change in humanity, change in our country, especially change concerning civil rights, has been a long and arduous struggle. From slavery to the Civil War, to the Jim Crow South, to segregation, to civil rights, to affirmative action, all of these stages answer a complex problem and then present complex problems of their own. And with each stage and development, we as a country try our best to strive to become a slightly more version of a perfect union. We try our hardest to better our collective self. We try our best at self-betterment. And just as with each step forward with civil rights, we encounter new challenges. Today, the unique challenge is that people are also becoming entrenched in partisan, polarized positions that present false choices that make no sense. It is plainly a false choice to believe that one must choose between supporting civil rights, equal rights, and supporting our police. As the rabbi of this community, I try to lead by example, dedicate time and effort to fostering our relationship with the Ward AME Church community, and I dedicate time and effort to my volunteer chaplaincy at the Santa Monica Police Department. As a minority, the Jewish community needs to support the rights of other minorities, and we need to support a strong, supported, funded police department. We, as an Adat Shalom community, need a strong, responsive Los Angeles Police Department. Just as an example, this past Sunday, anti-Semitic comments were written about Jews all over our sidewalk, outside the building in chalk. Thank goodness, as soon as we were notified of the incident, LAPD came out and wrote up the report right away and were as helpful as they could be. Our relationship with the LAPD is crucial and should never be taken for granted. And along those lines, nothing should be taken for granted. As Jews, we know what it is to struggle and overcome challenges. And we also know that we need, at moments, to show gratitude and appreciation. So we have these two ideas. The Torah instructs us in Genesis that all humanity is created equal. B'Tselem Elohim. Each of us is created in God's image. And in Deuteronomy, we're instructed, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha. You shall appointed for yourselves judges and officers so that there may be justice. The Torah hands us both sets of instructions, equality and justice. And it's always been, since the times of the Torah, if you read Joshua and Judges and Samuel and Kings, it has always been a struggle to do both well. And I believe that this week was a good week. Justice prevailed. I don't want us to pat ourselves on the back and say that the issue is over and it's behind us, because it's not. But occasionally we can come up for air and say that it was a good week. When we see injustice, we should demand that it be fixed. And when in fact it comes, justice should not be taken for granted. It should be celebrated. It feels like for months and months, the news has been an industry of negativity focused on everything that is wrong with this country. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot wrong. We have plenty of channels that focus on it 24 hours a day. For me, I'll admit that it's exhausting. And I know many, many people that have just disengaged from the news completely as a result. And the only way to get through is to stop and pause, especially when there are moments when the system works. We should permit ourselves the time to give thanks. There's a blessing that we recite in the weekday Amidah. I recite it 3 times a day. Baruch ata Adonai, melech ohev tzedakah u'mishpat. Blessed are you, Lord King, who loves righteousness and justice. As Jews and as Americans, as much as we ought to decry injustice, when it comes, we must also celebrate it, take a moment, and appreciate the fact that we live here in this country where these systems are created. For ourselves, for our kids, for neighbors, for our communities to see that we appreciate when these things happen. Wisdom, justice, these are the reminders of godliness at work in our society. When we recognize it, it deserves a moment of recognition, a moment of appreciation, a moment of blessing, thanking God. Baruch ata Adonai, melech ohev tzedakah u'mishpat. Let us say, Amen.